Welcome back to episode 8 of Brokers of Secrets. Now I'm going to ask you a really simple yet important question. What if the reason you haven't been hitting your goals is because you shouldn't be setting goals? I want you to listen to that again. What if the reason you haven't been hitting your goals is because you shouldn't be setting goals? Instead, you should be setting future memories. Hear me out. What does this all mean? What is future memory? Why would you say don't set goals? That's like against every success principle out there, it sounds, right? No. Let me take you through a little journey of understanding what this really means. If you've been setting goals since day one, of understanding that there's a thing called goal, and your parents or teachers or people in your family, whoever, they say, hey, you should set goals. It's important to have goals. And you set goals, right? Most people I've asked, from brand new entrepreneurs to very seasoned, successful entrepreneurs and or business owners, executives, leaders, people will say they set goals. But the problem is when I ask them, hey, how many percent of your goals do you actually hit? They'll say, well, it's maybe 10%, maybe 20%. And some of the ones say 30%, right? And it also depends on how aggressive your goals are and how long-term they are. Sometimes you won't hit them for a little bit, right? Well, historically, what I've gathered is that people are telling us 10 to maybe 30%. Well, if you have a history of 10 to 30% of achieving your goals that you set, what do you think your mind is going to think when you set goals next time? Your subconscious mind or unconscious mind is going to say, well, there's a 10 to 20, 30, maybe 30% chance of you achieving them based on past performances. Very logical, right? Now imagine for a moment that your subconscious mind and your unconscious mind is like the bank. It's managing the resources that you have, from mental, emotional to physical and beyond. And the resources that it manages, well, it manages it because it needs to keep you alive, right? Help you survive, and also hopefully help you thrive. And it regulates all the functionalities of the body and mind. Now, it's not going to want to waste energy on something that you have historically shown to not be able to achieve. That's important. That's important for you to understand that if you have a history of 10 to 20, maybe 30% of achieving your goals, all of a sudden you set this next goal, don't expect a miracle, because your past performance based on your subconscious mind's record is literally very low. It's pretty poor. So your subconscious mind, imagine again, as the bank, is not going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to give you resources to help you hit your goals. It's not going to say, well, you have 10 to 20, 30%, but this time it's going to be different. Because what? Because what's different, right? A lot of times people don't know that they have literally conditioned their minds to not believe in their goals because of past performances. They will continue, if they set goals, they will continue to categorize this new goal, as a goal. Therefore, your mind's going to think, well, not worth dedicating resources, motivation even, and or any type of relationship or energy to it, because look at what happened in the past. It was a waste of energy. That's really important to consider, right? Now, I'm going to give you a different visual. As you guys know, if you have any experience using technology, we have these folders that we store files. Our mind's very similar in a way. It has these folders and locations where we store certain topics, certain, categories of files. Imagine there's a folder that's called goals. And inside of this folder, you have all of your past and present and future goals. Well, based on the statistics of 10, 20, maybe 30% of you achieving whatever goals you set, anytime you set a new goal, the file gets put into the same folder we call goal or goals. And your mind says, well, it's all the same. It's goals, right? If you do that and you call your new desire a goal, you will naturally decrease your chance of achieving them. This is totally counterculture. This is totally against what people are saying about goals. They say set goals, but deep in the back of our minds, we all know how much of our goals we actually have hit in the past. So the moment you call it a goal, we've already self-defeated. And we're creating this natural resistance, this natural obstacle internally. Before we even start doing anything externally, there's already an enemy inside saying no. So here is the answer and a solution. It took a bit of time to figure this out, but when we figured it out, we were like, wow, how could this be so simple? It's so simple, yet profound. So here it is. Instead of goals, there's another folder that we know to be inevitable and or that have happened. They are real, right? They are real. It's called memories. But I need you to consider this. It's not just any memory. Because if you set a goal as a memory, your mind's like, oh, it's done. I don't need to do anything, right? Why would I put resources into stuff that's already done? You need it to be something that hasn't yet happened, but you have memory of it happening in the past. For example, there is, imagine a folder that stores where the sun comes up every morning. Yeah, you know, based on your past experience, the sun has come up every morning. Yeah. And you know, I know that we have different parts of the world where some parts of the world during the summertime, you'll see the sun all summer, right? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you have this recollection, this memory, right? Let's say you live in New York, or let's say you live in Miami, or let's say you live in, you know, a lot of parts of the world where you see the sun coming up in the morning. You will notice that there are memories of that happening every day since the beginning, since you remember. And then you can also tell that the sun's going to come up tomorrow. What we want is to identify the location, the folder of where you store that sun is going to come up with certainty based on past experiences. That folder is like a subfolder inside of memories. If you find that folder and you place your new goals in there, what you're going to find is absolutely astonishing. Astonishing in speed and ease in how you're going to achieve what you want. Because your mind is now, instead of putting maybe 10, 20, maybe 30% resources into it, your mind now is going to say, well, it's 100% chance. I'm going for it. Especially, now here's another thing, especially when you have set up a reward structure. Allow me to break this down real quick. Not only are we placing our goals in this folder, you know, in the past, right? This folder that basically tells us, everything in the past that we call goal, there was only a 10 to 30% chance. Not only did we do that, we didn't set any rewards, and we punish ourselves when we don't hit our goals. We look down upon ourselves and we're like, oh man, I knew it. I don't deserve it, or I can't do it. It's hard. And no one else has been able to do it. 9 out of 10 businesses fail. People come up with all kinds of external excuses and reasons why they didn't succeed. But in this world, we either have results or reasons, right? So if you really are wanting to be on the result side, you need to consider the folder in which you put these files, these things that you want to accomplish for the future. You can't put them in the folder we call goal. Yeah. That folder needs, just use a new folder. That's probably a lot easier. Plus, we also have a consensus. Right? In terms of society, we look at goals, and who amongst our society would say you always hit 100% of your goals? So you are reinforced in an environment where people are telling you, look, you don't hit all your goals. But is anyone going to question that the sun's going to come up tomorrow? You want not only your own reality, your own mind, your own subconscious, but also the subconscious mind of other people to be like, yeah, this is going to happen. You need to find that folder, and you need to put your new goals in there. And in fact, stop calling them goals. These are future memories that are inevitable. Just the way you label them is going to be a game changer. And then if you label them this way now and attach them to rewards that are truly enticing, you're going to have an easy time achieving them. So let's get into the second part of this episode where I want to talk about reward structure. Because first off, I said, don't set goals, set future memories. Here's the consequences of that. In the past, and I'm just going to generalize. I'm not saying that's what you did. In general, a lot of people will set goals and they don't hit them. They'll punish themselves. And then when they hit the goals, there's no rewards. They're like, I can delay this. No big. I can do it next year. I can do it. I'll go on a vacation, later when I have time. I'll take myself to dinner another time. I'll celebrate another time. I'll take time off another time. Self-care later. All of that, right? We have been living in decades and decades and decades of grind and hustle culture where people sacrifice mental, emotional, physical, fatigue, energy, life force just so that they can achieve something we call goals. And so this entire thing we call goal is attached to literally blood, sweat, and tears. On top of it, no rewards. It's pure sacrifice. And you're literally asking your body to sacrifice, your mind to sacrifice for a very low chance, a 10 to 20, maybe 30% chance of success with no rewards. How much resistance do you think you're forming? Massive. And so society's wondering, why are we self-sabotaging? Why do we have limiting beliefs? Why do we have limitations? Well, it's because we've set up these conditions to make them extremely and incredibly hard to achieve our goals. In fact, the natural way is we design and we want something. We are the creator. We create it. Creation should be effortless. And if it is not, you're doing it wrong. Creation should be effortless, should be speedy. And if it's not, look, I've done it wrong many times. And the reason we do it wrong is because, again, I said it earlier, we put it in the wrong folder and we generalize them with the other goals that we haven't achieved, zero rewards. And then when we fail, the chance of us punishing ourselves is decently high. So your mind's like, why would I do something that's a lose or lose, right? Lose or lose. No, that's not motivating. Instead, imagine where you set a goal that is inevitable because you allow your mind to accept that it can leverage all the resources. And I'm going to tell you why you can utilize all the resources. There are no unresourceful people, only unresourceful states. Your mental states can predict how much resources you will leverage because your mind is like a quantum supercomputer. It has so much resources, and it can tap into more resources than you realize. But when we don't, when we say we can't, when we say, oh, I couldn't do it, I can't, right? It's hard. Yeah, I can't do it that fast. Whatever it is, your reason for not achieving your goals, yeah, has a lot more to do with which folder you're putting in and then what you're attaching to it as consequences. So if you were to say this is an inevitable event and then you have rewards for it, you have these very incentivizing, very beautiful outcome and rewards attached to the outcome, your mind's like, well, this is very pleasurable. I want that. This is very, very pleasurable, right? Let me give you a very silly example. Let's say I give you $10 for you to fly to wherever, let's say Scottsdale, Arizona, right? Wherever you are in the world, right? Even if you live here and I say, hey, will you come to this part of town for $10? You might be like, that's not a lot of money. Not very motivating. Your mind will find reasons not to go. Yeah. Now, let's say I up it to 100. Some of you will say, yeah. But majority of the people will be like, well, my airfare or gas money is more than that. But let's say I up it to 1,000. Some of the locals might be like, oh yeah, I'd do it, right? Some of the people that are not local, they might be like, can we just do a Zoom call? Do I really have to show up? And then I'm like, yeah, if you want the 1,000, right? Now, let's up the numbers significantly. Let's say I give you 100,000. Would you come to Scottsdale? You probably drop everything and come to Scottsdale pretty quickly. Unless you have your time, right? What you're charging, what you're creating, what you're receiving is far more, which for many of you, that's probably the case. So you might still say no to 100,000. But then when I say $1 million, come to Scottsdale for a day. You're paid $1 million to come to Scottsdale. In that hypothetical, scenario, why would you not say yes? You would say yes. You'd be like, yeah, I'd go for a day for $1 million. Yeah, right? Let me say this. What if we up it to $100 million for you to come to Scottsdale tomorrow or in the next hour? You'd be like, I will do it right away. I'll find a way. I'll charter a jet if I need to, right? $100 million. Now, allow me to say this. It's not motivation. It's incentives. It's oftentimes that we misunderstand or underestimate or simply don't understand the power that we have over our own mind. We just expect it to work for us. We just expect it to do what we want, but we don't consider what our mind actually wants, what our body really wants. So a different metaphor might be really easy to understand. If you have a puppy or a kitten, now it's very important that you understand this, right? If the puppy or the kitten doesn't do what you want, do you just smack it in the face? That would be called animal abuse, right? Like if every time you're like sit and the puppy's like not going to sit, you just smack it in the face every time. Is that what you do? You don't do that, right? That's ineffective. That's not nice, right? What do? If the dog sits, perhaps there's a reward. There's a treat. Yeah? The dog sits again. You're conditioning it to do what you want and then rewarding it, right? I'm not saying there's no discipline. That being said, the reward is incredibly, incredibly important. Otherwise, you would experience burnout after burnout after burnout. And people will switch career and they'll get divorced and they'll wonder why they don't get what they want because they've never learned to reward themselves. Now, let me tell you this. If you don't have a proper reward structure, yeah, your mind will experience what that puppy experiences if you smack it in the face. If you give it rewards, if you learn to train it with rewards, a proper reward system with, instead of goals, future memories, you will find so much pleasure achieving memories. You'll find so much pleasure. It'll be delightful. Every day you will feel very alive and very energized because your mind has something it wants to go for and it has a reward attached to it and it will perpetuate that, right? Listen, if you really stand still or sit still and listen for a moment and think about why you haven't wanted or haven't achieved what you wanted, you need to realize we get 100% of what we want. And that includes not achieving your goals. And so the real question is, what's in it for your subconscious? Yeah. And so everything you do is about positioning your desires and dreams in the right folder, as I said before, or the right context, and giving your mind's eyes an opportunity to perceive it as something inevitable, looking at it and seeing it as something with a lot of incentives and rewards. That is how you create natural momentum. That's how you get your mind to do it without you constantly having to bug it, right? Have you ever had someone that you work with that you have to constantly remind? It's because they're not naturally incentivized. But if they are incentivized, they'll do it. Now, I'm going to give you a really ridiculous, really simple, yet primal and important example. If you're hungry and you really need to eat, do I or someone else have to bug you that you need to eat? Or if you really need to go to the bathroom, whether it's number 1 or 2, you really need to go. Do I have to say, hey, you need to go to the bathroom? Unless you're a toddler, maybe, right? But even then, eventually they go, right? You need to consider, how do you create that condition of a natural inevitability? I am going to hit all of these accomplishments. I'm going to achieve all of them, and I'm going to actually experience all these wonderful things and rewards that come with it, or come with the goals, right? Now they're memories. You need to incentivize your mind. You need to understand how to create this natural momentum, and the steps are so easy. So in the final part of this podcast, I want to remind you, oftentimes it is just that simple. When people say it's not that simple, that is actually the biggest lie. When it comes to achieving what we want, we are naturally creators. If you're not achieving what you want, that's actually the unnatural state. If you are not creating what you want, it's because you've created these structures in your mind that actually stops you from achieving what you want. Structures like the folder that we call, goals, and society, right, tells us it's okay, keep going, even when you fail your goals. All of those preconditioning, all of those things that presupposes that you're going to fail. And then growing up, you've been told that you're going to fail. Teachers, parents, friends, even yourself. And you will reaffirm over and over and over again that when you set goals, you're going to fail. Then why would you set goals? Set memories. You cannot argue that the sun tomorrow coming up, that level of certainty, you can't argue with that level of certainty. If you have that level of certainty for all of the dreams and desires that you have, man, I can imagine how upgraded your life. I can only imagine what you could do. See you in the next episode.